All right, guys, welcome to the MMA Fight Game podcast. I am here with a very special guest, a guest that took a fight kind of on short notice. We're here with Johnny Cupcakes Campbell. He is in a marquee bout, definitely most likely on UFC Fight Pass at Combat FC 5 on September 15th, which is a very busy weekend in the mixed martial arts world, at the Shriners Auditorium in Wilmington, Massachusetts, for the legendary OG Joe Cavallero and Rick Caldwell's promotion. Johnny Cupcakes, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Fantastic. It's great to be on. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. I appreciate making the time to talk to us on a Friday afternoon. Let's get the skeleton out of the closet. How'd you get the nickname Cupcakes?
Cupcakes came through my gym, South Shore Sport Fighting. So we have very off meta, you could call it, nicknames. And yeah, I'm a happy go lucky guy who loves training. And somebody rattled off Johnny Cupcakes one day and it just fucking stuck. At this point, though, the way I look at it is cupcakes are a whole bunch of ingredients that you have to put together. You got to
Yeah.
mix them up. You got to beat them. Then you put them in the oven and you bake them. And then when they come out, they're delicious and amazing. And that's kind of who I am. I've had a career that has had the highest highs and the lowest of lows at times. And that was just me getting my ingredients mixed up so that I could be a beautiful treat like I am now. And yeah, I just love fighting, and cupcakes is very fitting and the people seem to really enjoy it, so I keep it.
So when you walk out on September 15th, you got Gerald Muse who does the whole superhero thing. Are you going to walk out at Shriners Auditorium and hand cupcakes to everybody?
It's been done before.
Oh, it has. Okay.
I could very
know
well
that.
little like yeah, little like the mini cupcakes or something. Maybe we can individually wrap them and toss them out to the people.
Now the real question is do you have a cupcake sponsor? And if not, I think we should get you a cupcake sponsor to hand out their products for you to kind of go with the whole shtick.
I could not agree more. I think that would be a tremendous idea. I love that.
I'm in on that for sure.
Same.
So you have, like, of all the people I've talked to, you have over 37 pro fights, which is amazing, the longevity of your career. You had mentioned when we talked the highest of highs and lowest of lows. If you don't mind, can you talk me about a very high and a very low?
Yeah, absolutely. I beat Henry Corrales in Bellator, at the Mohegan Sun during COVID when there was no fans in the crowd, just Bellator personnel. And yeah, he was coming down to 135, and they definitely wanted to build him as like a future title contender. And I beat the crap out of him and stole that day from him, and that was amongst the highest highs that I've had in the cage. It was just the way the fight went and the lead up and everything, and COVID that was going on. It was just miraculous, really, the whole situation. So that was probably one of the highest highs. And then as far as lowest lows, man, I've learned a lot of lessons in that cage. So the lowest low, though, probably was when I got beat by a fellow Fernando Perez. It was a rematch of a fight that I had beat him in and that I should have absolutely won the second time around. And he just kicked me just right in the body. And my mind was in not the greatest of places at that time. And yeah, and I ended up losing that fight. And yeah, I fucking literally ran off into the night in my fight shorts, no shirt on, still had my wraps on, and like went out and ran off and like terrorized the community practically for the night. And just, yeah, I mean, as far as like, wanting to do this, it was like that was a defining moment of yeah, like this is about as bad as it can get, and losing to a guy that you should be beating. And yeah, it just, I will always as long as my body can do it, I'm going to be fighting and doing this because it's the most fun thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And that was the lowest low that I've had. And it just made me a better person and a stronger fighter.
Yeah, they truly say that you definitely learn more from losses than you do win. So it sounds like, you learned after you did your best Forrest Griffin impression from UFC 101 back in the day.
Yeah.
It sounds like you learned. So talk to me about the fight with Randy Costa. So obviously, Randy had an opponent drop out. Rick made a call to you. Did you have any hesitations of taking that fight, or because it's a marquee bout on UFC Fight Pass with a fighter who's trying to make it back to the UFC, who had some success in the UFC, was it a no-brainer for you and your team?
Yeah, for the most part. So Randy and I have trained together, and I always rooted for Randy, and I really like him. I think he's a great guy, and so this fight cropped up recently enough. Another promotion asked me to potentially fight him, um, and yeah, so basically we ended up not fighting though, and I knew that this fight was potentially on the table. I had said I wouldn't really call Randy out, but if Randy had already agreed to this fight, I'm open to it. And yeah, and the stars are aligning, and Combat FC has great matchmaking, and they had a tip or something, and they knew that this fight was potential, and they threw it together. I love big fights. I mean, I've been saying it for years now, really. I mean, my last like however many have just been giant fight after giant fight, UFC vet or UFC prospect just constantly. So yeah, like that type of fight is the exact fight that I was looking for. And I mean, I know Randy very well, and I think that this is the type of fight he needs too. He needs somebody that is going to be a formidable opponent who's going to stand in there and try to hurt him, and he needs to prove himself against somebody like me. And I personally think that I have the tools to take Randy out.
Piggybacking off that, without getting into specific game plans, what are your expectations for Saturday, or not Saturday, excuse me, Friday, September 15th at the Shriders Auditorium at Combat FC 5?
I expect Randy's crowd to be deafeningly loud. I expect Randy to come out like a bat out of hell, like he always does. And I expect my experience, durability, and well roundedness to be the deciding factors, basically. So I think that both of us have tools to win this fight, but I think that this is just another fight. I have had many fights like this. What Randy has not experienced is a whole lot of fights like this. He has obviously been in there against great fighters in the UFC, and he has performed well, but sort of back against the wall, if you will, like do or die. This is my moment.
Yeah, and after Saturday night, not overlooking Randy or anything like that, what would be next for Cupcakes?
I'm looking at this as like my first UFC fight. So it's on UFC Fight Pass. It's against a former UFC fighter who has aspirations of making it back to the UFC. I'm looking at this like it's my introduction to the UFC. So as far as I'm concerned, a UFC contract is what's at the end of this fight.
Yeah, I mean it's a busy weekend in the MMA landscape. It's tough because Joe Cav and Rick are putting on an amazing card at Combat FC. You have LFA with Piersma Smith, and then you have Mexican Independence Day. You have the weekend capped off by Noche UFC, headlined by Valentina and Grasso 2, Jack Della Matta, Kevin Holland, Tracy Cortez, Jasmine Javicius. It's a hell of a weekend to be a mixed martial arts combat sports fan. UFC Fight Pass that your fight will be on is only $9.99 a month, and to see those kind of level of fights from Combat FC and the other promotions is an amazing value. Or you can do a short track because you're a Plymouth guy, Plymouth, Mass, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so you're a local guy as well. So a lot of fans will come out there. We were actually at the last Combat FC4 with Joe Cav and Rick. Those guys are the nicest guys. They run a great promotion. Their staff with Joe's family. I can't say enough. I tell all my local AMI guys that I work with, Combat FC is, where it's at. You have Joe Cav's relationship with Dana White, which is, I think, sets him apart from all the rest of the organizations because no one has a direct line to Dana like that. But can't go wrong with that. You did just take your first boxing bout. Is that something that you're going to dabble in between bouts? You didn't have the result you wanted, but is that something just because you love combat sports and you love fighting, you're just going to keep doing it?
Exactly. Yep. I love doing it. I love challenging myself. And yeah, I mean, as far as if I can't have an MMA fight, then I'm going to have either a boxing match or a jiu-jitsu match or something. I'm constantly competing. So yes, absolutely. You'll most likely see me in the square circle again.
Yeah, I love it. What was that experience like changing venues and scenery and stepping into the squared circle versus the eight-sided? What's that like?
It was awesome. It was an awesome experience. I loved every second of it. Yeah, it's very similar, obviously, as far as like they're trying to hurt you, you're trying to hurt them. But yeah, like the purity of just punches was something that really I found addicting in a way. It's definitely something that I will look to do again. But MMA is really my main squeeze. So yeah, as long as I can punch and kick and wrestle people, that's what I'll be doing. It's just that aside from Randy, not a lot of people are stepping up to fight me. I either have too much experience or I'm too dangerous or this or that. So yeah, it was basically like I can't find an opponent to fight in MMA, so I'm going to take a boxing match, and then we end up right back in it. Thankfully, Randy's willing to sign the dotted line.
Yeah, I mean, and you fight at the 135. Obviously, Combat FC's 135 champ Pablo Gregorio just had a massive blistering performance at the Contender Series. He is no longer with the organization because he got signed to the UFC. Do you see potentially a win, maybe in a fight for that vacant belt in the future as well in your career?
Absolutely. If that's the road, then 100%. I think that our fight, Randy and not mine, is like a bigger fight than the other bantamweight fight that's on that card. I think that the implications are way greater for between our fight. So, I mean, John Duma, I've asked for that fight before. We did a combat jiu-jitsu match, and I know that's a guy that if he were to win, definitely. And then Jake Pilla, again, I respect him, but I think that I'm just too much man for him, and I beat both of those guys.
I love it. You were giving me some awesome sound bites for right now. I'm loving it, and I'm very appreciative of those sound bites. Selling that fight, I love it. It makes me interested in. That's the reason I do this stuff. Is kind of give you guys a voice and kind of get your stories out there. Because I think it makes the fights more interesting from even just me being a fan standpoint. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
And it's well received. Before I let you go, is there anybody like that's helped you in this camp or sponsors or anything like that you want to give a plug to?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Ambassador Pools. So they hook it up with sponsorship right now. South Shore Sport Fighting is my home where I'm going to be doing all my training for this fight. Yeah, I mean, Ryan White is a striking coach over there who's definitely going to be helping me quite a bit, and Zach DiSabatino is a killer 155er who's going to be squashing me for the next 3 weeks. So I appreciate him definitely. Yeah, so there's so many peeps out there. Obviously, Bill Mahoney, he's my the black belt and MMA coach that's taught me pretty much everything that I know and brought me all the way this far to be fighting, UFC level talent. Yeah, so those are my main people, but yeah, there's a lot more out there, obviously, but yeah, I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're just putting it out there. If there's a cupcake sponsor out there, my main man, Johnny Cupcakes Campbell, is looking for a cupcake sponsor. It goes hand in hand. I definitely think he can move some products with that nickname for you and your company. So if you're out there, just DM them on Instagram or message us, and we can get you in contact with Cupcakes there. But Johnny, again, I really appreciate the time. Busy weekend, that September 15th, September 16th weekend. You specifically on September 15th at Combat FC 5, fighting in a massive marquee bout live on UFC Fight Pass against UFC vet Randy Costa. I truly appreciate the time. I love Combat FC. If anybody's never been to a Combat FC show, they got to get there, especially with what Joe Cav and Rick do out there. But I truly appreciate the time, okay? And just sit tight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oops.